A pleasure to meet all at last, and here we are at it again with some more of TV shows that deserve the spotlight. Now, I could probably scour around for anything I could possibly talk about, but I feel like we could just simply put, go in a bit of a direction. We're not going to be that much further back in comparison to the last show that I talked about, which of course was Acceleracers. And I should probably note, that was a little long, and I really got to apologize for really carrying it on for such a long duration. So, I'll have you know though, I'll keep things more shorter and simple from here on out when it comes to shows. But here we go with Ozzy and Drix, a spin-off series that stemmed from the success, box office-wise and critics-wise, of Osmosis Jones, a 2001 live-action and animated film starring the likes of Chris Rock, David Hyde Pierce, Bill Murray, and Lawrence Fishburne. But in this case, it's a whole different cast, though they still do, in fact, adhere to the same personalities and emotional turnarounds. Pretty much like what we had in the real Ghostbusters. I'll pretty much explain it in good detail to the best of my ability. It takes place possibly sometime after the movie takes place. The ending where Thrax was defeated and Osmosis was able to restore the health of Frank. And as we know, the city of Frank was basically where he grew up in. Frank himself was pretty bad in terms of his eating habits, but has also had a bit of a tendency to stem away from his relationship with his daughter. And as we all know, in the movie, he accidentally vomited on a teacher of hers, causing some kind of scandal. It got him fired from a pea soup factory job that he used to work at, and he would be able to work at a zoo thanks to a friend of his. But while it wasn't the best that they could have done, I feel like it would have been better than just living out on the streets. Either way you look at it though, the movie came and went, did pretty well, and even by today's standards, still holds up as a good instant classic. With such a big cast and an impressively well detailed and made storyline, how could that possibly work as an animated show? Well, as I've said, the show basically goes right off the bat, taking place pretty much after the movie. Frank sitting on the chair with a midnight snack in hand, and appears to be the likes of wings covered in nacho cheese and jalapenos and stuff. Yeah, it's crazy. But what's happening inside of Frank's body are some days at the office, as usual. You have Osmosis himself, along with his partner Drix, which is known by his full name Drixinol, a cold supplement that Frank took in the movie, which is of course not an existing brand, in case y'all didn't realize right away. Anyways, they're basically after a thug, a disease called scarlet fever. And as we know, compared to regular fever, you would not want to mess with scarlet. But by any means, scarlet fever in this instance was played by Tim Curry. That's right, the same man who was also responsible for the likes of Pennywise and Dr. Frankfurt, just to name a few roles. But in this case though, even though Chris Rock and David Hyde Pierce don't come back to reprise their roles as Drix and Osmosis, we do in fact have Phil Lamar and Jeff Bennett, who were also popular actors by this point in time, but being more voice actors in contrast to actors that could do a variety of roles, not just voicing, but also performing, live on sets and whatnot. But nonetheless, Lamar and Bennett actually do a really good job at reprising these roles. You have Osmosis Jones, a dedicated police officer who is willing to do anything it takes to uphold the law in the city of Frank, and you have Drix, a loyal sidekick to his cause, but sometimes can be questioning his authority by any means. The writers simply did, in fact, know about the movie by any means, and they were pretty good at studying their homework. So in the end, what do we got? We got a pretty big series that ran from 2002 to 2004. Just to give you a good idea of how much they were able to carry on with the adventures of Osmosis Jones and company, here are the episodes. Alright, now that takes care of all that. As for the story itself, well, it primarily takes place in a boy named Hector Cruz, who basically lives not far away from where Frank is. But the thing is, how did they get there in the first place? Well, Ozzy and Drix got sucked up by a mosquito along with scarlet fever, and then transferred to Hector's body. They were both injected. They all managed to get inside and were thankfully welcomed and whatnot. All the usual stuff that goes on between outsiders of a city that probably isn't comfortable having them around. But it turns out that by the end of the first episode alone, Osmosis proves to be worthy, joining amongst the ranks of Hector Cruz's body. Being a blood cell, you'd think that he wouldn't do so well. Oh man. But Jones has got the skill, the unlikelihood of being a hero. And Drix certainly does his part as well, as a sidekick, sort of like what Batman and Robin have in mind. Though I feel like that with this being more recent in contrast to Batman, some people might not give a lot of potential or even attention to this whole thing. Though I will say that I do have the full amount of episodes. A playlist is in fact available on my channel if you're wanting to watch these episodes, because there is a lot of variety here. Definitely a lot of potential that this show was able to execute in a pretty well written manner, though it certainly has fallen under the likes of a lot of other shows, both animated and live action, that were around by this point. King of Queens, Friends, Big Bang Theory, Recess Kids, Arthur, and plenty of others, pretty much. Even King of the Hill was definitely able to undertake the likes of a good majority of series that are pretty much now falling underneath. And however you might remember the past as it is by this point, probably won't matter too much. Because let's face it, without YouTube and without a good majority of our network, we likely would have never been able to have such good memories brought back here to the future. So by any means, definitely give this show a watch. I enjoyed it a lot back in the day, and I sure hope that you guys do too. Across 3 or 4 different seasons, you'll surely find everything that you're looking for to make the show watchable and to make it enjoyable. As for me, I'm certainly going to look back on this show as being another one of those examples of a show that's done well to the point where it was able to carry on for years to come. But, like any show, it eventually had to drop off at some point. Unlike a good majority of others that we've seen so far, especially adult-level cartoons like Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, The Simpsons, American Dad. I mean, they're all likely going to remain for a long time. So, I would not imagine any of them getting better from here on out. But nonetheless, Ozzy and Drix had a great run at the time for what it was. I recommend it. So, that's pretty much just what I have to offer for this piece. I'll see you guys in the next installment pretty soon here in this show and on the channel.